Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the UFL DFS video for week number 1. This video is coming out pretty late. It's been a really busy week. Been waiting for a lot of these depth charts to drop and everything else like that. I believe, at least at the time of this recording, we have still yet to see the depth chart for the San Antonio Brahmas and DC Defenders. So take that game with a little bit of a grain of salt. Hopefully you have some coming out prior to, the week, the slate actually starting. But if there's any major updates with that, I will leave that down in the comments. But for those of you that didn't follow along last year with XFL, with UFL, I'm just going to kind of walk through my sheet overall. As we get moving throughout the season, we'll be talking about some target shares, percentage of carries, percentage of snap count percentages, and kind of how that all factors into things. But right now, we're just kind of going with the information that we do have at hand, the pricing, and then just kind of my general thoughts, whether or not I would play like a guy in GPP, a pay down option, a cash option, and whether or not I would expect myself to be either above or below the field in terms of ownership percentage on certain players. Obviously, ownership percentage will change slightly contest to contest, so just keep that in mind with the context of the contest that you're playing. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into the sheet for this week. So we did kind of have a surprise for the Birmingham Stallions that Jamar Smith is inactive this week. So Matt Corral won the quarterback one job. So it was between him and Jamar Smith, essentially. They said they're going to use a 2-quarterback system, and it seems like Adrian Martinez was always a plan of that 2-quarterback system with his rushing upside that he does present overall. I'm not really too interested in either Adrian Martinez or Matt Corral this week. If you really want to take a shot on Matt Corral, you can. I do expect he's going to be fairly popular just because of the name, because of the guy that had some NFL pedigree, being a third-round pick by the Carolina Panthers. So if you want to go to him, it makes some sense. If you want to get really cheeky with the paydown option at quarterback, maybe you go with Adrian Martinez and hopefully he runs for enough yards. Maybe he runs in a touchdown or two. But that's not really something I'm chasing for this week overall. At running back, we have C.J. Marable as a strong GPP option. Once again, should be leading this backfield. And then Ricky Person Jr. will be behind him for week number 1. Larry Roundtree is inactive. Not really too interested in Ricky Person Jr. myself personally. There's other paydown options at running back that I would be more interested in this week. And then we move down to the wide receivers. So kind of the one major thing from their depth chart to take away of, and keep in mind, depth charts at this point in time, they mean very little because we've seen guys listed as starters and then play like 20% of snaps in the past. And then the guy that was listed as the backup, plays 70% of the snaps. So kind of take everything with a grain of salt. But we did see Gary Jennings listed as a starter over Marlon Williams. Marlon Williams is working his way back from injury, though, too, so maybe just a way of limiting him overall. But the starters that they did have listed at wide receiver were Deion King, Gary Jennings, and Amari Rodgers. So Amari Rodgers, most likely the slot guy. Gary Jennings looks like he'll be on the outside. Marlon Williams was listed behind Amari Rodgers in the slot, so we'll see what that looks like moving forward. But like I mentioned in the preview video, Gary Jennings and Marlon Williams both have some inside-outside versatility in terms of being able to play on the outside or in the slot as wide receivers. So when we're looking at their wide receivers in general, the only one I'm really halfway interested in is going to be Deion King as a GPP option at $5,900 because he feels like the only guy that is relatively safe that we know he's going to be out there on the field more times than not. He has a little bit of upside, as we did see as the season moved along last year, and then obviously he is going to be their kick returner once again. Then we move down to tight end, Jay Sternberger, solid GPP option. Once again, we've seen what he did, especially late in the season. I think it was like 4 or 5 straight weeks that he scored a touchdown. So definitely do like his upside overall. Behind him, not too interested in the other guys, although they are pretty decent backup tight ends at that. Then in terms of the Stallions defense, I did list them as a potential cash option at $5,000. They're the most expensive defense. They're one of the better defenses in the league, and they go against the Arlington Renegades, who did struggle at times offensively last season. Moving down to the Houston Roughnecks, we have the quarterback position where Jared Garantano, it was listed as the quarterback one on the depth chart. He will be the starter, although head coach Curtis Johnson did say they will use multiple quarterbacks most likely for the first couple weeks. Reed Sennett is quarterback 2 behind him, so not really interested in either of these two guys at this point in time. It's kind of like that old saying, that old adage, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 1, so not really interested in either guy this week. We did have news that Mark Thompson, their star running back, will be inactive for week 1 due to his knee injury. Didn't practice all week. So there was a lot of reports saying that Tyon Evans will be pretty big in that case if he doesn't play. So I like him as a paydown option at $5,100. And then TJ Pledger obviously did pretty well in Mark Thompson's absence last season, so he's a GPP option as well. If you had to ask me at this point in time, I probably would lean Evans a little bit more, but I think both guys will be very involved in this backfield. And then in terms of the wide receivers, Kirk Merritt, who comes over as a wide receiver from the Saints, was only listed as running back 3 on the depth chart, not listed as a wide receiver anywhere, so that was kind of interesting. Justin Hall remains kind of your solid GPP option, $7,700. They're returning leading receiver from last season. And kind of the one surprise for me is that Stephen Dunbar Jr. is inactive week 1. Apparently, DraftKings knew what they were doing with the pricing there, because when they released the pricing, then I saw $3,000. I figured he'd be a starter for sure, and that would have been a cash game play. But he is inactive week 1, which is kind of a surprise there. And then I believe it is Anthony Retief Williams and Chike Kism both starting alongside Justin Hall. So that is kind of interesting there. Isaiah Heaney is another guy that will factor in, although it kind of sucks because Justin Hall and Isaiah Heaney both are better off in the slot, being smaller wide receivers, but they're probably their 2 most talented wide receivers at this point in time. So, if you really want to take a shot on like Chike Kism as a pay down option, you could do that. But Justin Hall is going to be the primary guy here, especially since Stephen Dunbar Jr. is not active this week, which was a major surprise to me. At tight end, we saw Woody Branham inactive. Brandon Bowman will get the start, at least on paper. Clint Sig is more of the receiving option, so he's a pay-down option if you want to go that direction. And in terms of their defense against the Memphis Showboats, I think the Showboats are going to have a very, very strong offense. And I do have question marks about the Roughnecks defense, so I'm not going to be playing them this week overall. And then we get down to the Showboats, who are on the opposite end of that game. Case Cook is one of the better, more talented quarterbacks in this league. $10,000 GPP option. No doubts about him this week. Troy Williams will be the backup behind him, and Josh Love will be inactive for week 1. But I do like the upside of Case Cook overall. At running back, Darius Victor will get the start. He'll be the running back 1. He is a very solid GPP option at $8,400. If you want to take a chance on a paydown guy behind him, Titus Swen is $4,000. He's listed as the running back 2 on the depth chart. Although Trey Williams, running back 3, has that pass catching upside and will be doing some kick returning for this team overall. And then in terms of the wide receivers, mainly interested in Jonathan Adams Jr., cash game option for me at $8,100. He is going to be their wide receiver 1. David Davis is expected to start on the outside opposite of him at $4,600. But don't be surprised if we do see some like DeAndre Overton and some other guys work in as well. Vinny Papali will be the starter in the slot. Mainly, personally, I'm interested in Jonathan Adams as that cash game play. If you want to take some shots on David Davis, you could do that as well. But once again, would not be surprised if DeAndre Overton and Lee Morris work into the mix as well. D. Anderson will be inactive for week number 1. And then in terms of the tight ends, really just interested in Sage Surratt at $6,000. Solid GPP option. We saw what he could do last season and give pretty good upside from that tight end position. Although, keep in mind, with UFL DFS, you do not have to start a tight end. They are just essentially treated as another wide receiver. In terms of the Showboats defense, I have them as a GPP option at $4,000 overall. Going against the Houston Roughnecks, they do have some concerns at quarterback. Their best player, Mark Thompson, is not playing in this game. So probably a defense that I'm going to be overweight to the field on this week overall. Although I'm not the greatest fan of this Showboats defense overall. They struggled at times last year, and they retained Carnell Lake as the defensive coordinator. They brought in some guys to kind of beef up this defense. Hopefully it pans out. But at the same time, some of these defenses that have had a lot of changes, it might take them some time to kind of figure that out just in general. I'll move down to the Michigan Panthers next. So I have E.J. Perry, $8,800 as a cash game play at quarterback. He is going to offer you some pretty good passing numbers in what should be a pretty wide open offense for this Michigan Panthers this season with that change at offensive coordinator. He does offer that dual threat ability with his rushing upside as well. So he will be the guy that I probably do have the most exposure to just in general this week. Danny Etling will be the backup quarterback behind him. Brandon Lewerke is inactive for week number 1, as well as Nate McCreary at running back. West Hills, at $8,900, GPP option if you want to go there. Matthew Colburn, kind of a pay down option at $5,600. Wouldn't be shocked if Matthew Colburn outperforms West Hills in week 1 just because, the familiarity with the offensive coordinator there. Raymond Calais, the other running back, I believe, is still on the suspended list, so we're not going to talk about him. Kind of the one surprise on their depth chart this week was that Devin Gray was not listed as a starter at wide receiver. He came over with the offensive coordinator, figured it would be him and Jordan Sewell on the outside, Trey Quinn in the inside in the slot, and then Marcus Sims was listed over Devin Gray on this week 1 depth chart. We'll see what that looks like. Maybe that makes Sims a little bit of a pay down option if you want to go there. I do still have some interest in Devin Gray. I would not be shocked, if he outsnaps, either Marcus Sims or Jordan Sewell, but we'll just have to see how that all plays out. For me, primarily at the wide receiver position, Trey Quinn is the kind of guy that I'm targeting. $6,900, has a little bit of familiarity with EJ Perry just in general, so I do have him kind of listed as a cash game option overall. Guy that I was typically over the field on a lot of slates last year. And then the other guy that we just have to mention, John Hightower, former Boise State wide receiver, spent some time with the Eagles and the Chargers. Listed as a backup, but at the flat minimum, $3,000, it doesn't take too much for him to pay off at that price tag. And then we move down to the tight end position. Cole Hukutini is the only guy here, $3,800. Not a bad price tag for a tight end that could be involved in the passing game. So he's definitely a solid GPP option. We see Derek Dees Jr. listed as inactive for week 1. And then Nick Jugamos is on IR at this point in time. In terms of the Panthers defense, they're going against the Battlehawks, probably a tougher matchup, but I do like the Panthers defense just in general. If the Battlehawks get off to a slow start, could be an interesting paydown defense overall. Moving down to the Arlington Renegades, we have Luis Perez at quarterback. He will be their kind of unquestioned quarterback 1 at this point in time. So I do have him listed as a GPP option. It is a tough matchup against the Birmingham Stallions, though, but he is one of the more experienced quarterbacks in all of spring football at this point in time. Behind him, Holton Ahlers will be inactive for week 1, so Lindsey Scott will be the backup. And then in terms of the running backs, we got Day Hunter listed as inactive for this week, so it will just be Davion Smith and Letty Brown. If I had to pick one between the two, I'm probably just going to go Letty Brown because it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split. Probably has a little bit better pass catching upside of the two backs, and he is cheaper just in general. Then we move down to the wide receiver position for them. So I kind of thought that Caleb Van Den Esch would be the starting slot, but the 3 listed wide receivers as starters are going to be Deontay Burnett, Javonte Payton, and then Tyler Vaughn. So, if you want to take some shots on Tyler Vaughn, Deontay Burnett makes some sense there. Payton is a guy that does have some big play upside as well. But do not be surprised when they rotate a lot of these wide receivers once again. If I had to pick one that I wanted to play for sure alongside Luis Perez, it's probably going to be Deontay Burnett, but there is some upside for some other guys as well. Then at tight end, we got Sal Cannell returning $5,500. Pretty good receiving threat there, so he's going to be a GPP option as well. Then we get down to the Renegades defense. Probably not a defense I'm playing this week overall. It's a tougher matchup against the Birmingham Stallions. Although you could make a case that Birmingham's kind of unsettled at the quarterback position. Even if you think Matt Corral is a good quarterback, it could be just kind of interesting to see how that offense clicks, especially with a new quarterback at the helm just in general. Moving down to the DC Defenders, Jordan Ta'amo's GPP option. This is kind of that one game that we don't have the depth charts for at this point in time as of the time of this recording. So Jordan Ta'amo, $10,300, solid GPP option. There are some question marks with his offensive weapons around him this year, so that could be pretty interesting. But the rushing upside does make him pretty attractive just in general. I might be a little bit underweight to the field on him this week, just because of some of those weapons that he does have at this point in time. Sounds like Cameron Harris will be the running back 1 this week. If you really want to get to any of these running backs, you can do it. Not anything I'm going out of my way for. Puka Williams, Darius Higgins, they're also there. We might see one of them get the inactive tag for this week because that seems to be the common theme so far this season. And then in terms of the wide receivers, Vincent Smith has been battling an injury this week. So if I'm being honest, not really expecting him to play. I expect Brandon Smith and Calvin Harmon to kind of be the 2 wide receivers on the outside. If you want to take some shots on Calvin Harmon, makes some sense there. If you want to take some shots on whoever ends up being the starting slot receiver between Chris Rowland and Kiki QT, you could also do that as well. Tight end's kind of an interesting position. Alex Alice is more of a blocking tight end. Burley Moore can do a little bit of things. He's probably going to be the starter at $3,000. They did bring in Caden Smith, who does have some NFL experience at $4,000. And then Sean Byer is another blocking tight end, but he is on IR at this point in time. In terms of their defense, they are $4,800. I expect them to have a really good defense once again, so they are a GPP option for me. Chase Garbers will be getting his first career UFL start. Obviously, with the Brahmas last year, they really struggled at that offensive line position. A lot of turnover there this year, but how much better will they be? And then what does that quarterback situation look like? Are they going to play Garbers the whole game? Or are they going to flip-flop between him and Dormati? Could be some upside to be had there just in general, especially if they can generate some pressure. Then we move down to the Brahmas. Once again, they are the other team that we don't have the depth chart for at this point in time at the time of this recording. So Chase Garber's listed as the starting quarterback, $8,500. Little bit of rushing upside there, nothing too crazy, but he is listed as the starter. Quentin Dormati, quarterback 2. It's safe to assume that Tom Flacco will be inactive. So if you want to go after Chase Garber's $8,500, it's a very appealing offense overall just because of the volume. He could be very interesting from that aspect. But at the same time, there is some risk because if he comes out and he plays poorly, they could switch over to Dormady and not even think twice about it. And then for the running back room, not super interested in any of these guys. McFarland is the most expensive, but I'm expecting a running back by committee, a timeshare at this point in time early on in the season. In terms of their wide receivers, I think it's going to be very interesting overall. Most likely have the most interest in Kirkland, who is $8,300. We saw what he could do last season. Marquez Stevenson, also pretty interesting at $5,800. And then I do have Justin Smith and TJ Vasher as kind of pay down options. Whoever ultimately ends up starting in that other outside wide receiver spot should have some appeal as well. If you really want to get to Landon Akers, you could do that. But $6,800, a little bit hefty for a price tag for a guy that is more of just a possession receiver. Probably not giving you too much upside. One note was Matt Landers was not listed on DraftKings, or at least at the time that I did this sheet. If he's been added since then, I do apologize for that. And then kind of at tight end, Cody Lattimore, pretty much just a big slot wide receiver at this point in time, $7,000. Do expect some decent upside for him as well, although that is getting up there in price tag if you consider him just a tight end. But if you just consider him a big slot wide receiver, kind of like Hakeem Butler is, definitely does make some sense to get some exposure to him. And then for the Brahmas defense, $3,800. I think they'll be improved from last year, but how much better will they be overall? And they are going against the DC Defenders. There are some questions for this Defenders offense at this point in time, so I don't mind getting to the Brahmas defense just in general. Perhaps a little bit overweight to the field on them this week overall. Then we get down to the Battlehawks. They're led by Jim McCarron, one of the better quarterbacks in the UFL this season. He obviously did spend some time at the NFL level this past year as well. GPP option, $11,000. Kind of the one detriment for him is he pretty much offers nothing in terms of rushing upside. Manny Wilkins will be the backup behind him, so we'll see Brandon Silvers inactive for week number 1. Kind of some important news that we got this week, though, at the running back position is that Mateo Durant will be inactive week 1. So Wayne Gallman listed as the starter, $8,500, looking like a pretty interesting cash game play. Jacob Saylor's a GPP paydown option behind him. Saylors did spend some time on the NFL practice squad with the Falcons this most recent year. And then Wayne Gallman's kind of been that backup running back at the NFL level that has had a lot of success, especially with the Giants when Saquon Barkley went down. If he's looking like anything like his old self, he should be dominating at this level just in general. And then for the wide receivers, the 3 that we do have listed as starters, Hakeem Butler, Blake Jackson, and Darius Shepard, all listed as GPP options, all have some pretty significant upside. Jeff Thomas is inactive for week 1. Ja'Cory Pearson is on IR. Marcel Aitman is listed as a backup for this season. We've seen a lot of times last year they did use 4 wide receivers. So is that going to be Marcel Aitman? Is it going to be Jamarcus Bradley? Is it going to be somebody else? We'll just have to see as the year moves along. Safe to assume it's probably going to be Aitman, though. And then we have the 2 tight ends, Jake Sutherland, more of a blocker just in general. Kamari Everett, if you want to take a shot on a cheap tight end, $2,500 does have some receiving upside there. And then for the Battlehawks defense, I kind of have them listed as GPP option ? Just because I like the Panthers, what they're going to be able to do this year on offense, but maybe does that take them a couple of weeks to move along? EJ Perry is making his 3rd career spring football start, so not like he has a ton of experience, although I do really like his upside just in general. But with that being said, that's a quick little rundown kind of on my UFL DFS sheet for week number 1. I will be posting this up on the Patreon page as well, so definitely be sure to check that out. If there's anything that changes between now and the first game starting off, between any of these other games starting off, we'll leave that down in the comments below, as well as kind of that depth chart for that last game once we finally do get it for the San Antonio Brahmas and the DC Defenders. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have for week number 1 of UFL DFS. If you guys have any other specific questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. Hope you guys all found this video informative. Like I said, future weeks we'll be looking a little bit more at target share, snap counts, percentage of team carries, and everything else like that. So we'll get a little bit better grasp on what these teams are going to start looking like as the weeks move along. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's mainly going to be MLB DFS Monday through Friday in terms of the corn pick videos over on FanDuel, and then with the weekly UFL DFS video for DraftKings as well. And you can also check out my UFL team previews. Obviously, some of that might have changed just with the depth charts that we've gotten so far this week. But a good baseline kind of to get familiar with some of the players on these teams overall. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for Prize Picks, BetUS, and Parlay Play. If you are a brand new user on any one of those three sites, when you sign up, you make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Parlay Play and Prize Picks, it's a 100% match on your initial deposit up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% match on your initial deposit up to $2,500. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day, no matter what day you're watching this on, and have some pretty good luck in UFL DFS for week number 1, and also enjoy your Easter if that is something that you are celebrating at the same time as well.